Could this happen in America? Conceivable? What would you have said if I'd said that 10 years ago? Maybe not so much. Okay, well, I want to give some examples. First, I want to tell a little story. Then I'll give the first example. Any Vietnam veterans in the room at all? No? I bet you know some though. Might make you a little bit angry, this one. Now, last year, I think it was, might have been 2012, the Communist Premier of Vietnam visited your President Obama. Now, during that little tete-a-tete, Mr. Obama made some rather strange statements. He said it's a well-known fact that Ho Chi Minh, Uncle Ho, the communist leader of Vietnam during the Vietnam War, was a big admirer of Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence. Caused a little stir in the conservative blogosphere. Can you believe that? He said it. The fact that Obama said this, because there is a tiny element of truth in this, the fact that Obama said this, and he was raised at the knee of a professional communist propagandist like Frank Marshall Davis, tells me where Obama's coming from. Because the real story is this. Back in World War II, Uncle Ho and his communist guerrillas were fighting the Japanese invaders in Vietnam. And they were getting some help from your OSS, your Office of Strategic Services, the forerunner of your CIA. Now that organisation was shot full of communists. Because while Bill Donovan, the man who set it up, deliberately recruited members of the Abraham Lincoln Brigades, the American communists who fought in the Spanish Civil War on the side of Stalin, because he wanted people with European military experience. And those communists were never properly cleaned out. When it became the CIA, that agency was penetrated from day one. Now also note, the American communists didn't fight in Spain as the Karl Marx Brigade or the Vladimir Lenin Brigade. They were the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. Just as the communists had an Abraham Lincoln School in Chicago, where Frank Marshall Davis taught incidentally, and a Jefferson School in New York. They love to hide their revolution behind your political icons. They do it all the time. Now, so Uncle Ho and the Americans chased the Japanese out of Vietnam. They were retreating anyway. Then the next mission for the communists was to get rid of the French colonialists who came back to Vietnam after World War II to reclaim their colony. Now Uncle Ho was thinking, well, the Americans helped me against the Japanese, I'm going to get them to help me against the French. And he wrote a letter to FDR asking for military aid. He knew FDR didn't like the French very much. He also knew that he would have to get American public opinion on his side to do this. And he wasn't going to get that if he went around spouting off about Vladimir Lenin and the dictatorship of the proletariat. But he might get it if he went around talking about Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence, which is what he did. All over Vietnam, did a huge rally in downtown Hanoi with thousands of people there, OSS officers dotted all through the crowd. Thomas Jefferson is my revolutionary idol. He is the ideal. He is the ideal revolutionary. The Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights are the model for Vietnam's revolutionary future. All designed to suck in American public opinion to get help against the French. Fidel Castro did exactly the same thing in Cuba before he declared himself as a communist when he had taken power. So it was a scam. FDR died, a real Democrat named Harry Truman became president, and he was nowhere near as stupid. He basically told Uncle Ho to get lost. Frank Marshall Davis used to write columns in his little Hawaiian communist newspaper, regularly calling Harry Truman a fascist. Because Truman opposed communism. He opposed Stalin. Therefore, logically, he must be a fascist in communist terms. And it's a real shame that a lot of modern Democrats do not realise they're no longer voting for Harry Truman or JFK. They're voting for a whole different animal these days. It wasn't the Republicans, for instance, who set up the House Un-American Activities Committee. It was the Democrats. They were often more anti-communist than the Republicans were in those days. But anyway, Obama made another statement at that time, at that meeting, that was, I thought, deserved a lot more attention than it got. He said that it is time for Americans to get on board with repairing the damage done during the Vietnam War, which means you have to send money to Vietnam to repair the damage done with Agent Orange and bombing by your troops fighting off the North Vietnamese communist invaders. There's a little communist group in your country, 300 members, committees of correspondence for democracy and socialism, a breakaway from the Communist Party USA. Its most famous member is Angela Davis, with the afro haircut, murder charges from the 70s. Hardcore communist group. They are allied to Vietnam. That's their favourite country. Always sending delegations over there. A few years ago, they set up a little front group called the Vietnam Agent Orange Reconciliation Campaign. They set up a similar one in Australia, all over the Western world. The aim of that group is to lobby your Congress to pay reparations to Vietnam for the damage your troops did fighting that war. I'm a bit old-fashioned, folks, but I thought reparations were what the bad guys pay to the good guys. Isn't that how it normally works? You damage someone, you pay reparations. So how come you guys have to pay reparations to the country that started the war? How does that figure? This little group is quite active. They can lobby veterans all the time. They've even got that great patriot Charlie Sheen to narrate a documentary for them. But most importantly, they've got a whole bunch of your congressmen and senators on board with their campaign, lobbying your Congress to pay reparations to communist Vietnam. They've got Sheila Jackson Lee out of Texas. They've got John Conyers out of Michigan. They've got Tom Harkin. They've got Jeff Merkley. They've got Al Franken from Minnesota. They've brought a whole bunch of delegations from Vietnam to appear in front of your Congress asking for aid. They've even had one, a little girl with no legs, in a wheelchair, in front of your Congress. Look at the damage done by Agent Orange. Look at this poor girl. Surely we must give some money to repair this damage. And the bill is still bubbling through your Congress now, and apparently your President is on board with it. They even sent Bob Filner, who was until recently a congressman from San Diego. Then he became mayor of San Diego and got a little spot of bother. You might have seen that. Bob Filner, son of the head of the Pennsylvania Communist Party, he was sent to Vietnam, I think it was in 2009, to negotiate these reparations. That trip was paid for by the International Association of Democratic Lawyers, an old Soviet front now run by the Cubans. A communist front paid a serving Democratic congressman to go to Vietnam to negotiate reparations from your country to that communist country. Anybody here know anyone who's suffered, any veteran who's suffered from Agent Orange damage? Yep, several of you. How long did they struggle to get any money, folks?
Never did.
Still are. Decades. Families have suffered, children have suffered, and your government won't give them a dime. Yet your president seems to think it's okay to send your taxpayers' money to Vietnam to pay for their veterans. And it won't even go to their veterans, folks. It'll go to the Vietnamese government to do with what it wants. It's a scam. That's what I call it, the Vietnam scam, in my book. And it's happening right now, and 300 hardcore communists have got your congressmen and senators on board with it. right now. How do you feel about that one?